The largest edible fruit native to the United States tastes like a banana crossed with a mango, and you cannot buy it in a grocery store at any price. It's called the pawpaw, and the reason stores don't carry it is biology, not flavor. Once you understand that biology, you can grow it in your own yard and eat something almost nobody in this country has tasted. That's what this is, what the pawpaw is, why it vanished, and exactly how to plant one that actually fruits. The pawpaw, Asimina triloba, grows wild in 26 states, from northern Florida up through Michigan. It's the only cold-hardy member of the custard apple family. Every relative it has, cherimoya, soursop, sugar apple, is tropical. The fruit runs 5 to 16 ounces, so the big ones pass a pound. The flesh is soft with a texture close to custard, and growers describe the flavor as banana and mango, sometimes with pineapple, depending on the variety. Kentucky State University, which runs the only full-time pawpaw research program in the world, calls it the largest edible fruit native to the country. So why have you never seen one? A pawpaw only develops full flavor if it ripens on the tree, and a tree-ripe pawpaw is already soft, about like a ripe peach. At room temperature, it holds for 2 to 3 days. That is the whole problem. Apples ride trucks and sit in cold storage for months. A fruit that soft can't leave the county it grew in. Growers identified this exact barrier back in 1916, and nothing about it has changed. The entire supply today is farmers markets in September at $4.50 to $8 a pound. Demand isn't the issue. The annual Pawpaw Festival in Ohio draws over 10,000 people. The fruit just can't travel. None of the history here is Garden Channel folklore. It all comes from primary records, and some of it corrects what other videos keep repeating. On March 7, 1785, George Washington wrote in his diary that he planted pawpaws in his shrubberies at Mount Vernon. By July, they were dead, and that November he sent to a neighbor for replacement pawpaw bushes. So the first documented backyard pawpaw grower in America lost his first planting. If yours struggles, you're in good company. You'll also hear that chilled pawpaw was Washington's favorite dessert. Colonial Williamsburg's historians checked and found no documentation for it, so it stays out of this video. Thomas Jefferson is in the record too. In 1786, while serving as minister to France, he ordered pawpaw seed shipped from Philadelphia across the Atlantic for a friend in Paris who wanted American plants. The best entry is Lewis and Clark. On September 18, 1806, 5 days from the end of the expedition, the Corps of Discovery ran out of provisions on the Missouri River, down to roughly 1 biscuit per man. Clark's journal from that day says the party was, in his spelling, subsisting on pawpaws gathered off the riverbanks, and that the men were perfectly contented and told him they could live very well on the pawpaws. The most famous expedition in American history finished its last week fueled by this fruit. Go back further, and it gets stranger. Pawpaw seeds are large, and a 1982 paper in the journal Science proposed that the animals that originally spread them were Ice Age megafauna, mastodons and giant ground sloths, swallowing fruit whole and carrying the seeds. That is a hypothesis, not settled science. A 2021 genetic study points to a different long-distance carrier, people. Native Americans were moving and planting this tree long before anyone wrote it down. The first European mention, usually dated to 1541 from the De Soto expedition, describes a fruit the Indians propagated everywhere they went. Now, the mechanism that decides whether your tree ever fruits. The part most planting guides skip. Pawpaws barely fruit in the wild. In one published study, less than half of 1% of wildflowers set fruit on their own. When researchers hand-pollinated instead, 17% set fruit. 2 problems cause that gap, and you can fix both in a backyard. Problem 1. The wrong pollinators. Pawpaw flowers are dark maroon with a faint odor of rot, and they're pollinated by flies and beetles, not bees. Flies are unreliable, so most flowers never receive pollen. This is documented enough that North Carolina State's Extension describes orchard growers hanging roadkill or dead fish in their trees during bloom to attract more flies. Kentucky State's pawpaw researchers recommend against that. Hand pollination works better and, in their words, is less objectionable. Problem 2. A wild patch is mostly one plant. Pawpaws spread by root suckers, so a creek bottom thicket that looks like 50 trees is often a single individual, repeated over and over. Kentucky State sampled wild patches on its own research property and found one that was entirely a single genotype. And pawpaws generally cannot pollinate themselves. That's why a wild patch can bloom heavily every April and set almost nothing. There's no genetically different tree in range. At home, you fix both in an afternoon a year. Plant 2 different named varieties side by side so their bloom overlaps. Then hand-pollinate. When a flower's anthers have turned brown and crumbly, the pollen is ready. That cue comes from Virginia Cooperative Extension. Collect it with a small artist's brush and dab it onto the flowers of the other tree. 10 minutes a week during bloom. Commercial cherimoya growers hand-pollinate their entire crop this way, and cherimoya is the pawpaw's own family with the same fly problem. One caution from Virginia's Extension. This works well enough that trees overset and get stressed, so thin, heavy clusters. Notice what that fix costs you: an artist's brush, and 10 minutes a week. No product, no spray, nothing to buy. A lot of gardening is like that, but nobody makes money telling you so. So the advice you get keeps pointing at fertilizers, boosters, and gadgets your yard doesn't need, sold by the same companies writing the advice. That's why we wrote Grow More, Spend Less. It's 105 growing methods with the real dollar cost of each one, and 42 famous products and hacks we checked, so you stop paying for the ones that do nothing. The book's job is the title: Keep Your Money in Your Pocket and Grow More Food. It's 50% off right now, and one purchase gets you every future update free. Link is in the description. The planting details, in order. Pawpaws are hardy in USDA zones 5 through 8, which means winters down to about -15 Fahrenheit. Nursery tags claim zone 4 through 9. Kentucky State's published number is 5 through 8. The southern limit is real, too. The tree needs winter chill to break dormancy. Current estimates run 400 to 1,000 chill hours. So right along the Gulf Coast, it may never fruit. Buy a container-grown, grafted tree of a named variety. The roots are the reason. Pawpaws grow a long taproot with brittle, fleshy roots, and digging one up usually kills it. That's also why you should not dig suckers out of a wild patch. They're shoots off the mother root system with almost no roots of their own, and they transplant badly. Grafting settles time and flavor. A grafted tree fruits in 3 to 4 years and tastes like the variety on the label. A seedling takes 5 to 8 years, and its flavor is a lottery. Mail-order grafted trees currently run about $26 to $40. Premium varieties run $65 to $120. Plant in spring, right as new growth begins. That's Kentucky State's guidance. Young pawpaws are understory trees, so give the tree shade its first year. A mesh tree tube works. Kentucky State's trials found a tree taller than about 18 inches at planting doesn't need the shade at all. After establishment, full sun grows the most fruit. Soil: well-drained, pH 5.5 to 7. Space trees 8 feet apart. Varieties: sunflower, overlease, and NC1 are the old standards. Shenandoah, Susquehanna, and Potomac come from breeder Neil Peterson's program. Kentucky State has released its own: KSU Atwood, KSU Benson, and KSU Chapel. Chapel averaged about 7.5 ounces per fruit in trials. Any 2 different varieties will pollinate each other. One flag: Sunflower is sold as self-fertile, and Kentucky State's position is that this has never been scientifically verified. Don't build a one-tree plan around a tag. After planting, the maintenance list is nearly empty, and there's a documented reason. Pawpaw leaves, twigs, and bark carry natural insecticidal compounds called acetogenins. Kentucky State states flatly that deer will not eat the leaves or twigs. Voles won't gnaw the bark either, so you can mulch right up near a pawpaw trunk in a way you never could with an apple tree. No spraying. Clemson's guidance says the tree can be grown without pesticides. The one pest worth knowing is the pawpaw peduncle borer, which in a bad year destroys blossoms. And if you find striped caterpillars on the leaves, leave them. Those are zebra swallowtail butterflies, and pawpaw leaves are the only food their caterpillars eat. Harvest runs late August to mid-October, about a 2-week window per tree. Ignore color. Kentucky State says color change is not a reliable indicator of ripeness. A ripe pawpaw gives to a gentle squeeze like a ripe peach, comes off with a light tug, and smells strong. Dead ripe fruit drops, so check the ground daily. Raccoons and possums eat most of the wild crop, and they'll take yours too. Eat the flesh only. Clemson's food guidance is blunt. The seeds and the green skin cause vomiting. Some people get skin irritation handling the fruit, so wear gloves for a big harvest. Picked slightly firm and refrigerated, fruit keeps up to 3 weeks. Fully ripe, about 1 week. Don't cook it. The flavor compounds break down with heat, which makes pawpaw jam a waste of good fruit. Scoop and freeze the pulp flat in bags instead. Purdue says it holds 12 months, and frozen pulp is how the small commercial pawpaw trade sells most of its crop. One last correction, because you'll see it everywhere. The claim that pawpaw is loaded with iron and magnesium traces to a 1982 analysis that measured the whole fruit, skin included, the part you don't eat. Ohio University researchers reran the numbers on pulp alone in 2024, and a pawpaw is nutritionally comparable to a banana or a mango. The number that survives is fiber. A half-cup serving carries roughly a fifth of your daily value. Grow it for the flavor you can't buy, not as a supplement. If you want trees, order 2 different grafted varieties this winter. Pawpaw nurseries sell out before spring, and plant the week new growth starts. If you want to taste one first, walk creek bottoms in September, anywhere in the pawpaw's range. The tree is easy to spot. Droopy leaves up to a foot long that look like they belong on a jungle plant, and a crushed leaf smells like green bell pepper. Find the patch in April when the maroon flowers are out. Remember where it is, and come back in September before the raccoon.
I put together this book in an ebook format with all my secret methods. Do check it out on my website, farmeasy.shop. Let's grow more and spend less.